I am going to explain culture shock to you. My culture shock. I'm experiencing aspects of it right now, still. I am going to explain culture shock to you. My culture shock. I'm experiencing aspects of it right now, still. And it's stressful and fascinating at the same time, hence my mixture of emotions. I was married 1 month before I turned 20 years old. After we moved out of our first apartment, it was $400 a month, and they included our utility bill, electric, water. They gave us a basic phone line that came with the house, and they gave us free basic cable, and it was furnished. So, and I lied. It was like $300 or $310 a month. That was our first apartment, my wife and I. It was furnished, free cable, free basic phone line, and the electricity. That was all included in it. After we were married, we moved into another apartment. I would have been, I'm going to still say 20 or 21. When we moved into that new apartment, we did not have a television. So essentially, I had toyed with the idea prior to that because of my spiritual concerns, religious pursuits as a Christian. So prior to that, I was watching TV sporadically. So essentially from the age of 20, I did not have a television. I would watch television at families' houses, friends' houses, but from roughly 20, I did not own a television. That's where my break with mainstream starts. I lived with other people when we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma for I think maybe a year, and we had a television there. When we moved into our own apartment, we did not have a television. And then when we purchased a television, it had a VHS player in it, but we had no cable. So essentially you could watch public television back then through your antenna, and a religious channel. There were like 3 or 4 channels you could watch, but I was only watching the religious channel, and I would use it for videos that I would purchase. And then this is the easiest way to explain it. I have not had in my life consistent cable television for easily over 20 years. There were times when I would see television. I have no connection to TV culture because I stopped purchasing cable for myself at the age of 20. I'm 52. We moved back to Pennsylvania. I was 49, I believe, somewhere in that time period. So over those 29 years, from 20 to the time I came back to Pennsylvania, and when we first moved back, we did not have cable by our choice, or we weren't watching TV, I can't remember. Either way, that's 30 years of very intermittent observation of anything on cable television. When I lived in Miami, Florida, the first time, 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, when Ruben Studdard was on American Idol, because we had a TV with an antenna, I actually watched every single one of those American Idol episodes. That is the first and last show I actually watched, like, consistently and observed. Prior to that, it might have been The Cosby Show or A Different World, something like that. After Miami, and around the time from 2000 on, all I've had access to or chosen to view was the internet. So I was on YouTube, watching YouTube way before YouTube had commercials. When YouTube went public and was going to make its subscription the first time, I was around for that whole uproar, and it didn't work. So everything from 2000 on until 3 years ago, I was only watching on YouTube. And I realize now how obscure and outside of the mainstream American culture the actual content of the stuff I was viewing was. It's frightening now how little I actually know about certain topics. And then the contradiction is, there are things going on now, or that people do now, or people are fighting over now. If you don't, because I did not watch and still do not consume mass media, the amount of stuff that everybody thinks is new that I saw like 15 years ago is also insane. So that confuses me, how people can watch so much TV and have access to the internet and know absolutely nothing about a subject, nothing. Like the level of ignorance, this probably sounds mean, but the level of ignorance is equally proportionate to the amount of consumption of mass media. It's like the more you watch TV and are really tuned in with the newest fads, the more ignorant these people are about subjects. Ignorant as in not knowing anything. So for 20 years, when I leave Christianity, all I do is read books. Just read books and research things online. And I feel the effects of having not watched TV, because when I come back, it's hard to explain, but now when I come back, it's like people are in the exact same place they were the last time I ever spoke to them. Like I hadn't seen people for 25 years, and I come back, it's the exact same person, the exact same mentality, the exact same pursuits, the exact same outlook on life, the exact same information when I left is the exact same information that they have now. And I don't know what to make of that. So anyway, I have to explain that in greater detail, but that's part of the problem that I am currently struggling with. This is what spun me out of control too. The other aspect of that is and then there are other times when I was just living in a van. We were homeless by choice, so it was fun, and we were saving a lot of money, and we were still doing things, and like we ate high quality food every single day, but I lived in a van. Anyway, so because I dropped out like that too, the side effects of that, from what I can tell, the positives are it made me have a different perspective on what a human is and what people are, because I live in a van. My wife and I live in a van. We live in a van in Long Beach, California. I was living in a van in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was living in a van in North Miami Beach, Florida. These were different times and incidences. I was living in RV parks, in an RV with these types of people. I lived in an RV park in Arizona, right beside the Triple T truck stop. That place was crazy. So these are the types of people I live around. All of my jobs, not all, the vast majority of my jobs until I moved back to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania 3 years ago, the vast majority of my jobs have been jobs where absolutely no white people were working, doing physical labor. These were immigrant jobs. I was doing immigrant work. I was around people who no one spoke English. I had jobs where no one spoke English at all. I was driving forklifts. I was on equipment. I learned jobs. The people who taught me how to do my job, how to go find the product and pull it and bring it back. The people who allowed me to drive forklifts, go in the aisles, find materials, bring them back, drop them off, mark them, write things down. The people who would give me instructions in Spanish. Those were the types of jobs I was working. So when people talk about immigrant labor and immigrants are taking your jobs, I never saw white people where I was working at doing the actual labor, so I know those people aren't taking those jobs. And those jobs are the hardest physical jobs for the lowest pay that exist on the planet. This is back-breaking work. So for years, now it's hard to explain, but that is where I lived at. The last job I had before I came back to Pennsylvania, I was a dishwasher at a high-end restaurant. It was inside of a condominium in southern Florida. And it was just surrounded by fancy restaurants. The tenants would walk their dogs in through the back. I'd see them while I'm washing dishes. They go up into their beautiful condos. Millionaires. I'm surrounded by millionaires. I wash dishes. No white people are in there. No white people manage anything. White people don't drop stuff off. Any English I hear spoken in there has some sort of Brazilian, South American accent, some sort of Eastern European accent. So people are unrealistic. When I come back and I hear all this new political talk, especially from Christians, when I come back and hear this new political talk around me about they're taking American jobs, the jobs that these people take, no American has the physical ability or the mental or emotional stamina to do these jobs. The greatest compliment in my work career, if I had to put this on a resume, this is how I know I am a good worker. I worked at a sake factory in Berkeley, California. The entire management was Japanese. Everybody downstairs that I worked with was Chinese or homeless or a drug addict. or in some sort of financial stress. I made sake. I touched a lot of the aspects of the sake production. No one spoke English until one day the gentleman who came in, he could speak English and Cantonese. He was Vietnamese. So when I left that job, my coworkers told me they had never seen a black man work that hard in their entire life. Those people made me strong. I am physically strong. I am mentally tough. I can work until the work is done because I was trained and lived and associated with nothing but immigrants for the last, realistically, 18, 20 years. Nothing but immigrants. Nothing but immigrant labor. Toughest people on the planet. Some of these people were doing back-breaking work, and in their home countries, they're doctors. I worked with lawyers. I worked with economists. I worked with former business owners. I worked with teachers. I worked with pastors. I worked with a geologist. Too many things to mention. I worked with all of these people who were doing back-breaking, physical, mind-numbing work. Lawyers in their home countries. Teachers in their home countries. They're Haitian, they're Jamaican, they're from Bolivia, they're from Colombia, they're from all over South America, all over Central America. Some of my neighbors were Russian. This is this broad mix of every type of person, an immigrant. So if I would combine these two things together, that I have no mainstream cultural connections. I don't watch stuff, I don't know things, I wasn't believing anything that came on TV that's just crammed down your throat. And then all I live around are immigrants. And these people work hard. They're crazy like us, they're mean like us, they're prejudiced like everybody else, they're geniuses like everybody else. Some of them are very thoughtful, some of them are morons. Some people are very curious, some of them are very hateful. Every group hated some other group, just like white and black people in the United States. So I fell into just seeing humans because I started to see how absurd it is. Because I was around sometimes nothing but black people, black-skinned people that hated other black-skinned people. I would get confused for a certain type of black-skinned person, and I get passes, I get free stuff, I get discounts. Then I get confused for another type of dark-skinned person. They hate my guts immediately. Then they find out that I'm quote-unquote African-American, then they like me or they hate me. So I got to live as a human, and I saw the differences down in there. Now, when I come back to Pennsylvania, and then I get a TV, and then I start to watch the news. I've been doing that more. Like the first couple of years I didn't, but now I was starting to watch the news and go onto YouTube and look at things, because the other culture shock, which would lead into me discussing my family, when I came back and I found out what Christianity is now, it cracked my mind. I could not believe it. Christianity is hard to explain. In the music I was listening to, it's hard to explain what it is like not to consume mass media. I kind of knew what I was doing when I chose to stop, and then I'm realizing the effects of being so far removed. It's because, I think some of my viewpoints are based on more of personal experience, and sometimes it's based on if you would not watch TV for 1 year and not watch anything put out from any commercially backed entity, don't listen to the music, don't watch the TV, but then use your computer and you can still, and there are TV programs out there that are made by people. I'm making a TV program. If you would do that for a year, it would make sense than if you came back and tried to talk to someone. So, like I said, I'm making these videos because I am having a difficult time processing it. I feel all of it. It's hard to explain, but talking about it makes me feel better. This is the essence of what this type of culture shock feels like. There are these movies where people will like get high. I saw 2 of them. Like people will get high, smoke a whole bunch of marijuana. In one movie, they black out. I saw the trailer. They black out, and then they wake up 30 years later. And in the other one, the guys are just high, living away from everything for 30 years. So high, I was high and living in like RVs and doing minimal work. I was high and doing yoga. Man, I'm gonna say like 12 years. 12 years. If you watch that movie, I missed so much. And I think that I was starting to base all of my beliefs on what I had read. Then a lot of it was just personal experience. I was getting high with immigrants and like, it's just crazy. I was unplugged. And then, but I was living in like this stream of humans that it affected how I view people. It was so different. My life was so different around so many types of different people. I was put in positions where the jobs I had, nobody spoke enough English for me to even communicate. So I was forced to learn to do other things. I would take people's orders for pieces of equipment. They would write it down in Spanish. I would go away and go get everything, and it would be perfect, and I would come back. I was put in that position, and it forced me. And in my relationships, the people who look like me would hate my guts for other reasons. So I was put into a position where eventually I had to accept humans, what humans were. It's just humans. They became humans. Humans. What these humans did with their money was incredible. It was just humans. I had nothing around me that was familiar forever. Then I was getting high and just done a lot of yoga. And I'm just, everything I'm interested in, that's all I look at. So all of my politics, I self-isolated. But I came out and I like people. And I respect people and I understand people. That started to influence my life. The type of religion that I practice, the only reason that I practice it is because they value humans, very human. There's no such thing as color that is valid as any sort of qualitative element of a human. It's just beauty, that's it, etc. Gender. I was into my sexuality enough that I came to be at peace with my sexuality. And I understand enough of the subtleties that I am not intimidated, offended by anyone else's sexuality, because I have a peace with my sexuality and I have an understanding of my own sexuality, its fragility, its complexity. So it's hard to walk around with people yelling in your face about homosexuals are destroying the planet when I've had enough complex experiences around people's sexuality that I am 100% sure that a high percentage of these people who are running around disparaging other people's non-heterosexual sexualities, a high percentage of these people also engage in and are attracted by non-traditional heterosexual sexuality. So this just is a big lie. It's hard. Anyway, I'm gonna quit saying that. So the culture shock comes from stepping back. I was out for like 20 something years. And when I come back, a lot of the times when I interact with people, it is it's like it's frozen in time in one very real sense, where you can't have a discussion that goes below surface trivialities because nobody's looked any deeper. That's what I mean by it's the same. Like some people, they're the same though in their wants, needs, desires, aspirations, but it's the same thing since we were 14. So I kind of struggle with that. It's weird either way. And then the other thing was like the Christianity side. And this is just me, but when I left, it seemed more spiritual, and it seemed to be in more of a oppositional relationship to like these types of politics and racism and weird hatred of people's sexuality, and like they hate women now. So it's as if this is the perfect way to explain it. Shortly after I just left Christianity, I bumped into a man at my job named Ken Whitehead. Ken was some sort of Anabaptist. Ken had a book called The Way of the Lamb or In the Steps of the Lamb. Ken Whitehead was an outlaw, and this was confirmed to me. His wife would wear the bonnet and the plain dress. Through weird happenstance, he showed up at my job. This guy was a Christian, and he was white, and he and his wife came to my house. I'm in my getting high stage and just doing what I do. And he was so nice and so sincere. It was fascinating. I could talk to him about my experiences in Christianity and my disappointments and what happened to me. And we were talking about Jesus and the Bible. This guy was the real deal. This guy made an impression on me. There were times in my life where I was making bad decisions, where I wasn't sure what to do in life, where I was still struggling with aspects of my spirituality. And in my heart, I knew that there's some cool white people and Jesus was the real deal from this guy. So I moved back to Pennsylvania, and the Christianity around me is so, I don't know what to say, to me it was so despicable, so reprehensible, so racist, so sexist, so mean, nasty, prejudiced, hateful, and godless. Because that's the energy I was getting from my family who said they were Christians. This is the energy I'm getting from Christians around me. It's sickening. It was sickening for me to see. It's sickening for me to feel. Then I'm wondering the whole time when I was just out there getting high and these people were shaming me, or they were acting like I'm going to hell, or I didn't know what I was talking about. Were they always this animalistic and hateful and spiteful? And now with this whole Trump thing, it's like all this wickedness just gets to pop out. So I was confused about that. But so anyway, it's disgusting. It is disgusting. Forgive me. I come back and Christianity looks like a hot, disgusting mess. And I hated it, and I'm mad about it, and I'm sad, and I'm confused, hence the depression. But this is my family. Like, I come back and I'm thinking, man, we're going to rally. Thank God for Jesus, because I don't hate Jesus. But man, when I come back, these people have lost their minds. Have we always been this animalistic and I wasn't aware of it? Have you always been this? This sucks. So the culture shock is hurtful. It blew my mind. Sometimes I'm 10 steps ahead. Other times I'm not even on the same page. I don't know what book we're reading anymore, because this looks crazy. It looks crazy. So anyway, I come back. It is so crazy. I think in my head, I was like, man, I wonder where Ken is. I want to go see Ken. So Ken was a plain person. I'm going to tell Ken's whole story later. So I'm riding through Chambersburg. I'm disgusted with Christianity. I'm family that say they were Christian. Man, they're hurting my feelings. I'm broke. I'm broken. I'm getting kicked when I'm down. I'm getting lied on. It's hypocritical. It's crazy. I say, I couldn't figure it out. So I think of Ken. Ken pops into my mind. Ken Whitehead. Anyway, I'm driving past this church. It used to be the Public Opinion. Now I think it's some other company, but there's a church right there on the corner. That's King Street. Little church. I forget the name of it. One day I'm riding past there and I see these plain people walking in and out. I knew Ken from 25 or more years ago. I see these plain people walking out, bonnets, the men got beards and everything. I'm a Muslim. This is what I look like. Anyway, I say, man, those people look like Ken. I'm going to go into one of these services. I'm going to sit down. I'm just going to ask them to explain to me what they believe about Jesus. I'm going to try and get my head right around Jesus because I'm getting bad feedback from my family. That's the next video. So I go in on like a Friday because they feed poor people everything. I was like, this is it. I believe this stuff. This is what it was like when I left. So I go in and long story short, I wait for some plain people to come in. They're serving coffee before they preach. I go talk to this guy. He has a beard. This is a beard. And his wife, they're plain. They're timid because I'm in there looking like I do, which some people, is this Pennsylvania. I'm in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, walking around looking like this. This is the regular response. So I'm talking to this guy. I'm drinking coffee. I'm trying to talk about Jesus, trying to figure out what's going on. He's not, you know what I mean? I know now. This thing is gone. This thing is gone away. So we're talking. I forget whatever background he was, whatever his religious beliefs, whatever sect he's involved in. He's like an Anabaptist. So we're talking, and I say something to the effect of, the reason why I came here, I knew this guy, Ken Whitehead, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, Ken was my neighbor. Oh, my God. I was like, what? Wow, what happened to Ken? Ken's dead. This is what he tells me. Ken died a couple years ago from a heart attack. So Ken has been in my house. Ken broke a meeting with this Anabaptist sect that he was in so he could come to my house. And then Ken took a Quran from my house and came back after him and his friends read it and talked about it. These Anabaptist people, he gave me his breakdown. He said he believed the Quran. He's like, yeah, what's the big deal? What's everybody fighting about? This is the guy. So anyway, Ken, I'm going to tell Ken's whole story later. He says, yeah, I was Ken's neighbor. I was like, what? He said, yeah, Ken died a couple years ago from a heart attack, but his wife is still alive. So I was like, you know what? I said, I know Ken. I used to work with Ken. Ken wasn't supposed to have a job outside of the community, I think. I'll get to that later. Anyway, so I was explaining how much Ken meant to me. Ken was a good dude. Ken's discussions of Jesus, I thought that was profound. He's like, yeah, Ken was a little crazy. Yeah, Ken had some peculiar ideas. That's what he would say. So that sums it up. Man, the one dude I'm looking at, this guy dealt with nothing but Jesus Christ. The stuff he knew, the places he'd lived, the experiments he'd done with himself, the comfortable nature with which he spoke of his sexuality and his different understandings of sexuality and restraint. He knew all sorts of crazy stuff. He lived in different places in the world. He was explaining the teachings of Jesus to me because he was it was crazy. It was real. It was crazy. I'm looking for Jesus because I am flipping out because of my surroundings. I've been away getting high, doing yoga. More on that later. I was out there living. So I come back, man, I couldn't find Jesus anywhere. I'm riding around, stressed out, miserable. I look at this church because I'm driving past one day, see these plain people. I say to myself, I'm going to go in there and ask these people about Jesus. I need to know because it's got to be better. I'm assuming they're going to hold it together. I find Ken's neighbor. I now know what happened to Ken. According to them, Ken is now crazy. So that's how I feel. That is my culture shock. I come back, now I realize if you would really, and no one, All this craziness going on around me, nobody ever quotes Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John for what they're trying to prove, because you just finagle everything else into hatred, sexism, national pride, social deviance, but you never quote the exact teachings of Jesus Christ because you can't. So anyway, the one dude I'm coming back looking for, man, he's dead. And before that, he was crazy and his ideas were a little peculiar. Culture shock. So